This short video is just to help the IEB matrics with their GTA and SGA that has just been released. So, as part of your portfolio for matric, you need to collect marks based on a set assignment that is given to every matric student in the country, every IEB matric student. And this year, they have chosen to celebrate 100 years of Afrikaans, and they want you to do your assignment based on your experience of Afrikaans and your journey with Afrikaans. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be need to doing some research, and then you will be doing an oral and you will be doing an essay under exam conditions. The good news is that all the information that you collect, once you've written your oral, you can use that same information to write your essay. The only thing you need to remember is that you must keep a note of your research, because you're going to need to attach that research to your essay when you eventually do it. So I would suggest spending a bit of time doing the research for this, because it's actually a really interesting subject. And I've put together a little document that I actually did a while ago, and it was based on so many students that I was teaching were saying to me, why do I need to study Afrikaans? And that's actually the assignment that they have given you. They want you to look into why it's necessary to study Afrikaans and actually why you should see the benefit of studying Afrikaans. So the main thing is that a lot of research has shown that being bilingual gives you huge advantages. It challenges a part of your brain that science and maths and art can't do. Learning a second language changes the way you think. It literally recalibrates your mind. And so even if you look at Afrikaans as not necessarily studying a language, that if it's useful or not, it's more the fact that you are studying a second language. And that's why it's important to do it. The reason why you are studying Afrikaans is obviously you have been told you have to do it, and that's why I think a lot of people are resistant to studying it. But once you've seen the information that I'm going to share with you, you will understand why Afrikaans is actually a good language to be studying. Unfortunately, you're only going to be realizing this now right at the end of your school journey. And it's a pity you guys didn't know this at the very beginning, like in grade 8, because then I think a lot of you would have approached the subject with a completely different attitude. But maybe the research that you do now for this assignment will change your attitude towards the language. And who knows, maybe because of your change in attitude, your marks might improve. So, as I was saying, part of the assignment is to go and do research. And the main thing that you need to look into is the facts about Afrikaans, because you want to be using this like in your introduction and some of your facts. So this information I've given you here, you need to go and find Afrikaans research. You're not allowed to use English research and translate it. It's got to be Afrikaans research, but you will be able to find it. So just make sure that you Google correctly so that you can draw this information. But the main thing is there are approximately 8.6 million people in the world who speak Afrikaans as a first language. So that is really important. That is Afrikaans as a mother tongue, not Afrikaans as a second language. There are way, way, way more people if you add those people that have Afrikaans as a second language. And, this is part of the argument where people say, I don't understand why I've got to do Afrikaans. It's such a waste of time. Nobody speaks Afrikaans. And I mean, Charlize Theron is famous as saying that only 4 people speak Afrikaans. But we now know, based on facts, not just an interview on American television, that there are a lot of people that speak Afrikaans as a mother language. The other thing about Afrikaans is it's actually the closest language to English linguistically. And this is because English and Afrikaans actually come from the same original language. So it is actually easier for English-speaking people to learn Afrikaans than people with other languages. And I'll show you further on. The reason for this is that Afrikaans has 300 English cognates. So cognates are words that are spelt the same, mean the same in more than 2 languages. And I've given you the example here of bank and hotel. So we know bank and hotel in English, bank in hotel in Afrikaans. So they spelt the same, you say them the same, and they mean the same. And that is called a cognate. So there are already 300 words that English-speaking people know in Afrikaans before they even start learning Afrikaans. So when people say to me, my vocab is really bad, I go, I don't understand why, because you already know 300 words. So if you look at this example, my pen is in my hand, my arm is in warm water. In Afrikaans, my pen is in my hand, my arm is in warm water. So those are examples of cognates. So the thing about Afrikaans, and again, this resistance to learning Afrikaans, and so many people have said, I don't understand, why can't I be learning an African language? Well, absolutely, you can go and learn Zulu, Sotho, Xhosa, or whatever. But I've studied Xhosa, and I can tell you for a fact that Afrikaans is way easier to learn than any African language. Not just the pronunciation, but the linguistical side of the language is actually really difficult. But with Afrikaans, it's very straightforward. It's one of the easiest languages to learn. And the reason why it's easy is because Afrikaans doesn't have genders. So if you study French or Italian, language Spanish, Portuguese, any of those languages, they have masculine and feminine and then plural. So you've got to remember, like, is a pen masculine or feminine, or is a table masculine or feminine? And it becomes very confusing. But Afrikaans doesn't have that. A pen is a pen, a table is a table. You don't need to know if it's masculine or feminine. So just like English, it's actually very easy. The other thing is in Afrikaans, you don't have to conjugate your verbs. So in a lot of other languages, by conjugating verbs, it means that you have masculine singular, feminine singular, then you have plurals, and each time you have one of those forms, the verb changes. So it becomes really confusing. So if you are studying French, if you take one verb, you're going to have six different forms of the verb, depending on if it's singular, plural, masculine, feminine. So you can understand how it gets very confusing. Afrikaans doesn't have that. The verb is the verb. Again, just like English. For Afrikaans, the nice thing about Afrikaans spelling is that the words are phonetical. So what that means that the way you say the word is the way you write the word, or the way that you read the word is the way you say it. And I've said here in Afrikaans, there are no silent letters. In English, we know there are so many silent letters, but in Afrikaans, you don't have that. So you don't need to worry about it. The letter you see is the letter you say. So in that way, it's very easy to read as well. If we look at the background of Afrikaans, so Afrikaans is a Creole language, and a Creole means that it's made up of lots of different languages, and I'll go through that a little later. But generally, Afrikaans is one of 10 Germanic languages. So all of these languages I've given you here, these all originally come from a form of German in the olden days. And so you would have the original German, then from there you would get English, the modern German, Dutch, and then Afrikaans is the fourth part of that original German language. Afrikaans is also the newest language in the world, and it is a gateway to all of these languages. So I know people that have gone to live in Sweden, and they have gone to study Swedish because they're now living in Sweden, and they have been able to pick the language up really quickly because a lot of the words are similar to Afrikaans, the language structure is similar. So you can see here that it is a gateway to a lot of other languages. So the benefit of learning a second language, okay, the benefit of being bilingual, and this is one of the aspects that they want you to cover in your GTA. So as I said, remember to go and find all of this information in Afrikaans. You need to be able to give a source. So you can use the information that I'm giving you here to go and try and find a source in Afrikaans. Um, Ironically, learning Afrikaans helps to improve your English because when you study the Afrikaans language, it actually helps you understand the English language better. It improves your cognitive development. So what that means is it challenges your brain. It makes your brain work in a different way to what maths will work or art will do. And learning Afrikaans actually helps you with problem solving. It also has an impact on your maths because it'll help your maths marks improve because it's helping you with problem solving. And then the overall effect is that it increases your IQ. So it has been proven that people that have a second language tend to have a higher IQ than other people. Learning a second language also helps improve your memory. Just think about all the vocab and everything that you have to learn. So that is definitely improving your memory. It also improves decision making. So because you are learning rules and you are learning another language and you're having to think in a different way and you're having to problem solve, all of this has an impact on decision making. And that then has an impact on sport and life in general. And a second language also creates critical thinkers. Because what it does is it makes you look at something from a different angle. Because you're learning something completely foreign, it's not natural to you. And so you have to find a way of understanding it. And that develops your critical thinking. And critical thinking is really important as you move on into life because you've got to be able to understand your surroundings. And it also helps you when you go to university. So, learning a second language and becoming bilingual has huge positive impacts on you. It's not the fact that you're learning Afrikaans, it's the fact that you're learning a second language. Obviously, learning a second language is also valuable for helping you to understand others. It makes you flexible, it helps you understand other cultures. In Afrikaans, obviously, it's going to help you understand the Afrikaans culture. There's a lot of misunderstanding about Afrikaans people in this country. There's a very negative perception of Afrikaans people. But I think that once you start delving into the poetry and the music and the movies, you'll understand that Afrikaans people have a great sense of humor. They have a beautiful language that allows them to express themselves. And it'll also help generate a lot of tolerance. At the moment, the world that we're living in is very intolerant and there's very little empathy around. And learning a second language helps develop tolerance and empathy. And so, even if you're just learning a second language for that, to make yourself a better person, to make yourself a more rounded person, learning a second language is really important for this. It also challenges you to think out of your mother tongue environment. So most English speaking people and most of the students that I deal with who are English speaking, when I say to them, why are you so resistant to learning Afrikaans? And their answer to me very superciliously is to say, well, everybody speaks English. So therefore, why do I need to learn Afrikaans? All Afrikaans people must learn to speak English because everybody speaks English. Yes, English is an international language and it's a business language, but why should everybody have to conform to you? Does that not then make you a form of dictator where you are telling other people, ignore your language, you've got to speak my language, and I'm going to look down on you because you can't speak my language? We can't afford to be like that. We cannot live in a society where we expect others to conform to us. We all need to learn at least a second language and to learn more about another culture. If we're going to be living in this country where we have 11 languages, you can't just live in your little English enclave and expect other people to learn your language when you're not prepared to open up and communicate with other people. And I think this is the key to everything. Living in a society that we do, we need to be able to communicate with other people. We can't just live in our own little English speaking world. And as you can hear, I'm English speaking. So I completely understand where you're coming from. But I do also believe it's important to speak another language. I speak 7 languages. I enjoy learning languages. And the reason why I've learned 7 languages is because I want to be able to travel and communicate with people in their own language. I just think it shows respect. If you are expecting people to learn your language and you only want to speak English, you are being incredibly disrespectful to other people living in this country. And that's why I've said, do you want to be a citizen of a small enclave of English-speaking people, or do you want to be a citizen of South Africa? And if you want to be a citizen of South Africa, you need to speak more than one language. So why are you resisting learning Afrikaans? And I'm going to throw facts at you. So the first thing is that everybody says, oh, Afrikaans is for white people and Afrikaans is for conservative white people. Yes, a very small minority of Afrikaans speaking people are white and conservative. And you know that because of what's been going on in this country and AfriForum and going to Donald Trump and trying to get, exile for Afrikaans people. But those people are a very small minority. They are not the majority of Afrikaans people living in this country. So if you and these facts here are all based on the census, the 2022 census. So they are fact. I'm not making this up. 60% of people in this country who speak Afrikaans are not white. So that shoots that argument down straight away. The majority of the people who speak Afrikaans aren't white. Afrikaans is the fastest growing language in this country, especially amongst young people of all races. Again, not just white people. In 2022, the census ranked the languages. Afrikaans was more spoken than English. Okay, and these are the mother tongue languages, not a second language. So obviously isiZulu is the most spoken, followed by isiXhosa, then Afrikaans. And as you can see here, English is only fifth. So again, why are the minority English-speaking people expecting the majority of the people to speak their language? Isn't this going back into the olden days where the minority were trying to impose their thoughts and beliefs on the majority? So there are more people speaking Afrikaans in this country than there are speaking English. If we look at the Western Cape, which is where a majority of my students are, again, nearly 50% of the people in the Western Cape speak Afrikaans. Only 20% speak English. So again, how can you expect people to speak English when you're in the minority? So if we look at the history of Afrikaans, especially in our country, so Afrikaans was originally spoken in Cape Town before English. We know that the Dutch arrived here in 1652, and yes, when they arrived here, they did speak Dutch, and then over the years, another language developed from that, and that was called Afrikaans. And Afrikaans, as I said, was a Creole language because it was influenced by a whole lot of other languages. So Afrikaans actually developed over 300 years ago. The name Afrikaans comes from the Dutch word Afrikaans, which means African. So we know that Afrikaans people are African. They come from Africa. And remember, the word African doesn't necessarily mean black. African means a person who comes from Africa. We know that Afrikaans music, again based on research, is one of the most popular and high-selling genres in the country. And it's actually a pride of South Africans. A lot of English-speaking people sing Afrikaans songs. A lot of Black people sing Afrikaans songs. And I've given you here Biggie, right? So Biggie has become quite famous. He was played in the clubs. And I remember when my daughters had their valedictorian, we went to a club to Tin Roof, and they were playing a lot of the Biggie songs like Damas. And here were these English-speaking kids who were violently anti-Afrikaans, didn't want to learn Afrikaans, but yet in the club, they were jawling to Afrikaans songs. So there's the irony of the whole thing. I will attach this document. You can click on the video and you can listen to Biggie. Also, if you think about it, when people travel overseas, especially when they go and live overseas, they use Afrikaans as a way of identifying fellow South Africans. If you think of when South Africans go over to watch rugby, Afrikaans is the language that draws them together. Think about that for a moment. We also use Afrikaans in our day-to-day lives, little expressions that we have. A lot of those things come from Afrikaans. And this is here where I was speaking about Afrikaans as a Creole language. So these are all the different languages that over the years have created the Afrikaans language. Obviously, the first one is Dutch. So yes, Dutch has the biggest influence on Afrikaans. Then we've got French, because remember the French Huguenots came to live in the Cape, and they moved and formed a lot of the wine farms, and they obviously brought French with them. And so a lot of French words moved into Afrikaans. And I've given you the word pantoffel, which means slipper, that comes from the French word pantoufle, or a venster, which is a window, comes from the French word fenêtre. So we've got a French influence, then we've got a Malay influence. So if you go on holiday and you travel around Malaysia or Bali or whatever, you will see these words, pondok, sarong, pirang, baklay. These are all Malay words. And these were brought to South Africa by the slaves. So the Dutch imported a lot of slaves from Malaysia. The slaves arrived in Cape Town and they started obviously working in the homes. And so then they started mixing Dutch and Malay because the owners of the slaves spoke Dutch or French, and then obviously the slaves spoke Malay. And so they started creating this language. Then you've got the influence of the Nguni languages, which were all the Black languages that were obviously used in and around the Cape as well. And so that's where you get words like Donga and Babalas. Those come from Nguni languages. Obviously, there are more, but I'm just giving you examples. Then at one stage in Cape Town or in the Western Cape, the English took control and sort of the Western Cape became a Cape colony. So then you had a lot of English now moving into the Afrikaans language. So there you have words like hotel and bank that come from English. We also had Portuguese traders that used to trade along the coast, and they obviously brought some words with them. Then remember the original people in the Cape before the Dutch arrived were the San people. And so when the Dutch arrived and they started the settlement, because remember they first built the castle in Cape Town and they used to trade with the San people. And then a lot of the San used to come and work in Cape Town. So a lot of those San words moved into Afrikaans as well. So words like Gogo and Eina and Aitza, those are words that originally came from the San people. And then lastly, we had a lot of German settlers that came to South Africa, particularly in the form of German missionaries. And they also brought obviously their language with them. And so a lot of German words were also included into Afrikaans. So words like spioen and stofzuier and spiel, those come from German. Also, it's interesting to remember that a lot of the German missionaries helped write down the African languages. So the German missionaries and the German settlers that came here had a big influence on the structure of the language and the linguistics of the language. So as you can see here, Afrikaans does not purely come from Dutch. It's made up of a lot of different languages, and it is a true Creole language. So if we go back into history, the first time Afrikaans was actually written was in the 1830s, and it was actually written in Arabic script for the Cape Muslims in their Quran. So that's the first time Afrikaans was actually written. It was written by the Muslims in their Quran. Here I've given you an example of an Afrikaans singer called Refense, who sings in Afrikaans. He has an absolute affinity with the Afrikaans language, and you must click on this video and you must watch it. He's got the most beautiful voice, and he sings stunning songs. He writes his own songs and he sings them. So here's an example of an atypical Afrikaans singer. You know, we always imagine them to be like, Kurt Darren, white conservative, but not all Afrikaans singers are like that. Okay. Then also, again, this is something you could use maybe in your research is where you can study overseas, Afrikaans overseas. So these are some universities that where you can study Afrikaans overseas and you can do degrees in them. And then obviously one of the benefits of learning Afrikaans is it does help you get a job in the Netherlands. And this is an actual job description that was on LinkedIn that I found, and that literally says here, you need to be able to read and write Afrikaans and English. So there is a huge benefit. Okay, that's really not important. So now what I wanted to show you, this was this idea about the cognates. If you read this poem here, the poem can be read in English and in Afrikaans. And this is my example of how when English people say, I'm bad at Afrikaans, my vocab is so bad. And then I use this as an argument. Okay? You do have the words. Now, this here is really important because part of the research and part of the oral that you have to do and the writing that you have to do is you need to talk about what makes Afrikaans so special for a non-mother tongue person. So the thing about learning another language, and in this case, obviously, we're talking about Afrikaans. One of the benefits of learning another language is that it gives you an insight into, as I say, that language or that culture. And what I've said here is om 'n ander taal te praat is om 'n tweede siel te hê. This means to speak another language is to have a second soul. And I think that is the key to everything. People living in South Africa, you don't just have one soul, you have two or more souls. If you speak every language in the country, you have 11 souls, because every time you learn a language, you are creating another soul within you. And I think that is a very sort of philosophical way of looking at the benefits of learning another language. This other statement here, 'n ander taal is 'n ander visie van die lewe. So another language is another vision of life. Again, learning another language, you look at things differently. You look at things through that language's culture. So this is all the ammunition that I've given you. Then what I've done here is I've given you some social media because I think when you're doing research for this project, definitely go and have a look at social media. And I just put this in because this is how a lot of people feel when they are actually doing their Afrikaans.
Extreme, the temperature today is 500 500 degrees. Extreme die snow op die Tafelberg gezien, maar dit is bijna cloudy op die tafel vandaag. Extreme.
So that's probably going to be a lot of you when you do your when you do your orals, but don't worry because everybody is going to feel the same way. But I just wanted you to feel that even, this guy, he obviously can't speak Afrikaans properly, but he doesn't mind. He's going out on social media and he's actually sort of being humorous about it. And that is the attitude that you need to take with you when you are doing your oral. Don't take yourself seriously. And then lastly, I've given you, again, if you click on this picture, it's a singer, an Afrikaans singer who has taken an English song. So he's taken the Bee Gees song, How Deep Is Your Love, and he's written a really funny song based to the music of How Deep Is Your Love. And that's given you the subtitles so you can read as he's singing. And I just think this is a really fun way of looking at the Afrikaans language. So there you are. I hope this has given you a little bit of inspiration for your project that you need to do. Definitely go onto social media, go and have a look at any of the Afrikaans that is available. The research that you need to do, you need to look at music. So you've got Kurt Darren, you've got Spoegwolf, you've got Karen Zoid, Bok van Blerk, Chris Chameleon, Biggie, Tino, and Refense are some of the musicians you can look at. They also said you should look at poetry. So any poems that you did in high school that you really enjoyed. You can include some of your set work poems if you want to. In terms of books, you can look at books or short stories. So those can be any books that you've read at school. They need to be from grade 8 onwards. Don't do Donkerweb, but you can do any other books or any short stories. In terms of movies, you can refer to any movies that you've watched in high school. So the movies would be things like Semi Soet or Die Book Club, or if you want to watch Tuiskoms on Kyknet on DSTV, there's Hoofmeisie, there's Klein Karoo, there's Neisner. There are lots of Afrikaans movies, so you can refer to one of those. On social media, you can look at people like Afrikaans is Groot or Joe Black. There's a comedian called Alfred Adriaanse who's really funny. You can look at Stefan van der Merwe or Emo Adams. There are lots of people on social media that do Afrikaans that you can refer to. And then in the document, they also said you could refer to idioms or language. So, if there are any Afrikaans idioms that you really enjoy, or if there's any aspect of the Afrikaans language that you really enjoy or that you found interesting, doubt if most people would do it on that. But they're giving you lots of things that you can refer to. So spend time doing your research. And then the main thing is just look into the value of being bilingual, the value of learning a second language. So there you go. I hope that's going to help you with your GTA. And yeah, good luck.